If you don't pull, this whole house starves. You useless old woman! You live here to serve us! Sometimes, the worst cruelty.
If this story touched you, hit subscribe so you won't miss the real-life stories that cut even deeper. Every subscription is your way of saying, no one deserves to be treated like a servant, especially the ones who brought us into this world. Support the channel so I can continue sharing more stories that awaken the heart.
Watch and see just how cruel a human heart can become.
Everyone in Umuahia used to say the same thing about Mama Nkechi. She's too gentle for this world. And painfully, it was true. She spent her entire life in a small hut beside the barren cassava field, where the red soil cracked like old wounds. She built her life with calloused hands, with the quiet sighs she hid in the night, and with a love that refused to fade despite poverty for her only son, Chima. When Chima was still home, the kitchen was always warm. The smell of egusi soup drifted all the way past the fence. Mama would tell him old stories, and he would eat and laugh loudly, as if his laughter alone could heal all the dark corners of life. But life has its own way of testing the gentlest souls. When Chima left for the city to work, leaving his aging mother in the care of his young wife, Ada, the house grew cold literally and figuratively. The cooking fire rarely burned, dry leaves piled in the yard, and Mama slowly faded into a quiet shadow inside the very home she had built with her heart in tears. Ada was nothing like Chima, not the kind of different that comes from being young or wanting freedom, but the kind of different that felt like a storm, sudden, fierce, and always leaving destruction behind. She lived in the house, but she didn't belong to it. She moved with a look of irritation, as if every breath Mama took was an offense to her peace. At first, the changes came quietly. Ada let Mama do everything: cooking, fetching water, drying cassava, cleaning. Ada only stood with her arms crossed, watching like a boss supervising a servant. Mama didn't complain. A lifetime of endurance made her believe this was normal. She's young. She adjusts, Mama told herself, swallowing her worries. But silence can wrap around a person's neck like a tightening rope, long before they realize it's choking them. Ada grew worse, not just difficult, cruel. Some afternoons, when Mama bent over picking up half-eaten cassava roots, Ada stood at the doorway, her voice sharp as vinegar. "Move faster. Old people are too slow." The village began to notice. Sometimes Mama passed by with her back more hunched than usual, her eyes avoiding everyone's, as if she feared they might see something. When asked, she forced a smile. She's young. She'll learn. But no one is easier to deceive than a mother desperate to protect the one she loves. Then came one scorching afternoon, the kind of heat that could melt a tin roof. Ada stood in the middle of the yard and said something so vicious that the neighbors who heard it froze in disbelief because it didn't. It sounded like something a human would say, but something spoken by someone who had lost all respect for the elderly. Even a cow knows how to pull a plow. But you, all you do is eat. The sound sliced through the air like a blade hitting stone. A few neighbors went still. Some children who were tossing stones under the mango tree stopped and looked up. Even the wind rustling through the banana leaves seemed stunned by the disrespect. Mama stood in the corner of the yard, still holding her small bundle of cassava. She didn't say a word, but her eyes, for the first time, the gentle light inside them dimmed. What replaced it was humiliation, quiet, burning, slowly killing something inside her. The neighbors thought the cruelty would end there. A harsh insult, then nothing more. But they were wrong. That sentence was a dark prophecy. A curse. A warning of the brutality Ada was about to turn into reality, something no one could have imagined. Because sometimes the monster doesn't come from far away. Sometimes it grows right inside the home you believe is safe. And Mama had no idea that the moment Ada uttered those words, her life had already begun sliding down a slope with no end. A place where human cruelty burned hotter than the scorching sun of Umiwahia. Ada often stood at the edge of the cassava field, where the wind bent the aging rows of plants and the cracked earth stretched all the way to the far bamboo fence. The evening sun struck her hair, sharpening her already sharp features, making her face even colder. That field, nearly a full acre, was the only thing Chima relied on whenever he sent money home. But to Ada, it was nothing but a burden. And that burden, she wanted to get rid of in the fastest, cheapest way possible. A dark idea flickered in Ada's mind, something no normal person would ever dare to think. But Ada wasn't normal. Greed and cruelty had grown with her, like two snakes coiled inside her heart, waiting for the right moment to rise. Renting a cow costs money, she muttered, kicking the dry soil. And hiring someone costs even more. Then her eyes stopped on the shape of Mama, bent over, picking up shriveled cassava roots. Mama's back curved like she carried the whole harvest on her shoulders. She was slow but steady, and in Ada's eyes, she was no different from an animal that could be used. The thought sprouted fast, like weeds, like poison, like something that, once rooted inside Ada's mind, could never be removed. That night, when the whole village was swallowed by frog calls and heavy darkness, Ada didn't sleep. She sat by the window, staring at the cold moonlight soaking into the red earth of the yard. The quiet was so thick she could hear the soft clink of metal when she opened Shima's small wooden chest, the one where he kept his farming tools. She pulled out an old rope. The fiber was worn, rough, but still strong. She held it in her hands as if testing how much weight and how much pain it could handle. Ada stepped into the yard. The night wrapped around her like an accomplice. She tied one end of the rope to a wooden post. She pulled the other end tight, then wrapped it loosely around her own waist, not to pull anything, but to measure its length, and to imagine how tightly it would fit around an old woman's body. Under the moonlight, Ada's eyes gleamed like burning coals. She crouched, grabbed the leather whip leaning in the corner of the animal shed, the one Chima used to drive livestock while plowing. Ada ran her hand along the whip, like someone stroking a new source of power. She swung it once. WHIP. The crack tore through the night. The sound startled the chickens and made the air itself turn colder. Ada stood still for a moment, listening to the echo vibrate through the wind as if it were a melody meant just for her. A slow smile spread across her lips. A smile with no trace of humanity. "This plow," she whispered to the darkness. "You will pull it." In that moment, the sick plan in her mind became clear. No longer just a passing thought, but a mission. The next day, Ada began her preparations. She watched Mama constantly, how she walked, how she bent down, how her fragile legs trembled on uneven soil. Ada cared nothing for Mama's feelings. She only calculated. That afternoon, she pretended to be kind and handed Mama a bowl of watery porridge. "Eat, you'll need strength. We have a lot to do tomorrow." Her voice was sweet like sugar, but cold like stone. Mama took the bowl, unaware that in Ada's eyes, she was no more than a tool for the field. Ada secretly took the plow blade from the storage shed and scrubbed it clean. She tested ropes on it, dragging it across the dirt to hear the sound. She measured the distance from the yard to the field, calculating how much rope she would need to keep Mama from escaping. Every action was deliberate, like an assassin preparing for the perfect strike. And when night came, Ada returned to the yard, testing the whip, pulling the rope, laughing to herself. A black crow perched on the roof, staring down. It didn't caw, it only tilted its head, as if even a scavenger bird could sense that what was happening below was something unfit for the eyes of the living. While Mama slept, Ada stood outside her door, watching. The old woman lay curled on her narrow bed, her breaths weak and steady. A faint breeze stirred the corner of the worn mosquito net. Ada stared at that scene without a shred of pity. "If you can't work," she murmured, tightening her grip on the rope, "then I'll make you work." A complete plan now lived in her mind. A plan so twisted that even her shadow on the wall looked longer, distorted, like a demon newly born from the human heart. And the night in Umuahia grew colder, as if warning that something dark was about to fall upon the house that once echoed with Chima as laughter. The tragedy hadn't begun yet, but its shadow had already spread across the yard, the bamboo walls, and every fragile breath Mama took. Ada had made her decision. And once a cruel person decides, darkness always wins. Dawn had not yet arrived. The sky was still drowned in that cold blue-gray shade before sunrise, the hour when even the birds refused to sing. The early wind hit the skin like a slap, carrying heavy mist and a chill that seeped straight into the bones, the kind of chill that warns of something terrible coming. Ada had been awake for hours. She opened Mama's door without a sound, entering like a shadow. Mama was asleep, curled under a thin blanket. Ada didn't look at her like a person. Her gaze was sharp, cold, calculating. "Ada, why are you up so early?" Mama asked when she saw Ada's figure at the door, her voice trembling with confusion and fear. Ada didn't answer. She grabbed Mama's arm and yanked. "Come," just one word, colder than the morning mist. Sharper than a blade, Mama was dragged across the yard like a weightless sack. Her heels scraped the damp ground still wet with dew. The wind plastered her gray hair across her face like ragged strands tied around her fear. "Ada, what are you doing? What's wrong? Talk to me, please." Mama tried to cling to the doorframe, but her hands shook too badly to hold on. Ada yanked again, nearly flinging Mama into the yard. Quiet. That quiet wasn't loud, but it was terrifying. The voice of someone whose mind was set and would never turn back. The sky was still dark when Ada began dragging Mama down the narrow dirt path to the field. The red earth stretched ahead, flanked by bushes and rows of cassava darkened under the fading moonlight. The soil clung to Mama's knees as she tried to stand, but Ada never gave her a chance. Ada, you're hurting me. Please stop, please." Mama's voice broke like dried leaves in the wind. But Ada didn't listen, or rather, she no longer had the ability to hear begging. In her mind, there was only the plan, only the objective, only the cold satisfaction of turning Mama into free labor. When they reached the center of the field, Ada shoved Mama down. The ground was icy, dew soaking into her knees and making her tremble. "What did I do wrong?" Mama cried, tears dripping onto the red soil. "Ada, what did I do to deserve this?" Ada crouched in front of her. Their faces were inches apart, Mama's breath catching in the cold air, Ada's eyes like two blades. "Wrong?" Ada smirked. "Your mistake is being alive and not knowing your place." The last bit of hope drained from Mama's eyes. Before she could react, Ada pulled out the rope she had prepared the night before, loop already formed, tested over and over in the dark. She tossed it over Mama's back and yanked, hard enough to bring even a young person to their knees, let alone an elderly woman. "No, Ada, stop, please." Mama's cry was cut short by the harsh scrape of rope tightening. The coarse fibers dug into her skin, merciless. Mama's body folded in pain as the rope tightened further and further. Ada jerked it again, deliberately dragging it across Mama's skin to leave long red streaks that began to bleed. Mama broke down. Not the kind of crying born from sadness, but from someone realizing misfortune had finally come to claim them. "Ada, please, I'm begging you." Her voice trembled like shaking leaves. Ada stood tall, staring down at the trembling figure. She exhaled slowly, enjoying it. "Cry, go on. Cry now so you won't scream later." Then she dragged the rope toward the plow blade lying at the edge of the field. Ada tied the rope to it like she was fastening a beast of burden. Her movements were quick, precise, the motions of someone who had rehearsed this many times. Mama understood now. and fear shattered her completely. I can't do it, Ada, I can't pull that. I'm not a cow. Oh, but you will, Ada said. Or you'll die here. The wind swept through the cassava rows, rustling like whispers from the darkness. The first faint line of dawn split across the sky, but even its light could not soften the cruelty on Ada's face. She picked up the whip. Her hand clenched around it like she was gripping authority itself. Ada stepped in front of Mama, lifted her chin with the tip of the whip, forcing Mama to look into her eyes. Don't ask why. You exist to work, starting today. You'll pull this plow. And I'll teach you how. Then, WAIP. The whip cracked into the dirt beside Mama. Soil burst up. Mama flinched violently, shaking as if the strike had landed on her back. Ada smiled faintly, leaning down to her ear. Next time. I won't hit the ground. Mama could only cry. But tears couldn't soften a heart that no longer existed. And in that first morning, as the sun rose above the distant bamboo grove, humanity and cruelty stood face to face in the vast cassava field. And for the first time, Mama understood. Some wounds don't come from whips or ropes, but from the very person you once called child. The sun had barely risen above the bamboo grove when the harsh sound of a taut rope snapped across the cassava field. Morning dew still clung to the leaves, but the ground beneath Mama's feet already burned like fire. Behind her, the plow blade dragged along the soil like a metal beast, heavy, stubborn, always pulling her down. Mama took tiny steps, her legs trembling as if they might snap. Each step tore through her breath. Each tug of the rope felt like the sky itself was pressing on her back. The plow carved into the earth, scraping deep grooves, the metal scream cutting straight through her heart. She tilted her body, trying to balance, but even the slightest shift of wind made her frail frame wobble. Her breathing was broken. Her heartbeat faltered. Behind her, Ada walked slowly, deliberately, her feet pressing into the dirt without even a flicker of pity. She held the leather whip so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her eyes were not the eyes of a human, but of someone who had grown comfortable with pain. Hurry up! Ada barked, her voice sharp as broken glass. If you stop, I'll tear your skin open. The words stabbed Mama's ears like needles. But she didn't reply. She didn't dare. Every time she tried to speak, fear sealed her throat shut. Mama kept pulling. Her legs shook like dry branches in a storm. Her back bent lower and lower, the pain blending into one single agony. She couldn't tell where the rope burned, where the dirt scraped, or where her heart was breaking. One step, another step. The plow stayed just as heavy, just as stubborn, just as determined to drag her deeper into the red soil. Sunlight poured down, exposing the deep, angry marks pressed into her back by the rough rope. Every breath stretched the skin beneath it, burning like fire. By the 13th step, her foot slipped. Only slightly, but enough to send her entire body collapsing forward. Mama fell face first into the dirt. Dry cassava soil mixed with morning mud dusted her cheeks. The harsh taste of earth filled her mouth. She barely made a sound. Crack! The whip sliced through the air, sharp enough to scatter a flock of crows. The lash struck across Mama's back, not tearing skin, but delivering a shock so violent it felt like her spine lit up. A strangled cry escaped her lips before fading instantly. Her breath trembled. Her hands shook. Ada stood behind her, breathing calm, steady, as if lashing an elder woman was no different from tending a garden. What did I say? Ada hissed. Stand up. Mama tried to roll over, but the rope pressed deeper into her back, sending waves of fierce, burning pain through her arms. Her knees sank into the soft red soil. The faded scarf on her head slipped off, revealing silver curls, damp with sweat and dew. Please, Ida, I can't pull anymore. Mama whispered, her voice cracked and thin. Can't? Ada snorted. You've barely done half a row. Even an old cow can do 3. She stepped forward, grabbed Mama's hair, and yanked her head upward. Mama let out a choked cry, her neck jerking painfully. "Look at the field," Ada whispered into her ear, her voice cold, patient, terrifying. "This is where you'll repay your debt to me." Then she released her. Mama's head dropped back to the ground with a soft thud. Her body trembled violently. She wanted to stand. She wanted to breathe. She wanted to live. But her legs trembled uncontrollably, refusing to obey. Her heart raced, not from effort, but from fear. Fear that she might collapse here. Fear that no one would find her. Fear that her life would end under the silent sky, with only the red earth and human cruelty watching. Ada stepped back, lifted the whip with both hands, her voice cutting sharper than the leather itself. "Let me help you up." Crack! The second lash struck lighter than before, but cruel enough to send a jolt through Mama's entire body. Ada! Please stop." Her voice was no louder than a breeze. "Stand up." The words landed like commands meant for an animal. Shaking, Mama pushed her trembling arms into the soil. Her knees scraped the earth, her breath breaking in stuttering gasps. She clawed her way upward, not through strength. Finally she stood. Not because her body could, but because fear held her upright. The sound startled the earth itself. Even Ada froze for half a heartbeat, the whip suspended mid-air. A figure raced toward them from the end of the field dress stained with dirt, headscarf sliding off from how fast she'd run. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with horror, as if she refused to believe the scene before her was real. It was Mama Kalu, the woman villagers jokingly called the village loudspeaker, because she saw everything and knew everything, but never in her life had she witnessed anything like this. "Ada, dear God." Her voice cracked, as if someone pressed fingers around her throat. She stood frozen for a moment, staring at Mama and Khaki sprawled across the dirt, fragile as a bundle of old sticks ready to break. Her back soaked in blood, the rope biting into her body like it was squeezing out her last breath. What are you doing?" "This is Chima's mother." "Dear heavens, Ada." Mama Kalu staggered back, her hands shaking violently. Ada snapped her head around. Her eyes were bloodshot. Her mouth curled into a twisted smirk, half madness, half challenge. "She wouldn't work," Ada said flatly, as though talking about livestock. "I'm only teaching her." Mama Kalu's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The scene before her shattered everything she knew about cruelty. "Oh my God," she whispered. Then suddenly, she lunged toward Mama Nkechi, collapsing beside her. Her hands touched Mama's shoulder, and she jerked back instantly when she saw fresh blood stain her fingers. "Nekshi! Nekshi! Oh Lord, help her!" Her voice broke apart. Mama didn't answer. Only a thin, trembling breath escaped her lips. Ada stepped forward, her voice sharp. "Move aside. This has nothing to do with you." Mama Kalu looked up, fear and fury mixing in her eyes. "Ada, you've lost your mind." Ada tightened her grip on the whip, inhaled slowly, and took one step toward them. The air split in two. The cassava field held its breath. The sky itself seemed to press down on everything beneath it. Mama Kalu trembled, but she still spread her arms over Mama, like her small body could shield her from the monster standing before them. The wind blew, carrying the smell of soil, blood, and the scent of something unspeakable about to happen. Mama Kalu's scream shot through the misty morning air like a spear. It carried so far that even villagers who were just lighting their cooking fires jerked their heads up. No one knew what had happened yet, but that sound. It wasn't the sound of a normal call. It was the sound of someone who had just seen something no human should ever witness. Minutes later, shadows began appearing at the edge of the field. One, then two, then dozens. They all ran, men, women, elders leaning on canes, children still half asleep being carried on hips. All of them pulled toward one single point, the place where Mama Kalu's scream had risen. When they arrived, what they saw froze their blood. Mama Nkechi lay collapsed on the ground like a branch snapped in two, her breathing nothing more than a faint thread. The rope dug deep into her back, wrapped tight around her frail body like shackles. Whip marks streaked across her skin, red, split open, as if her flesh had been peeled from bone. The plow still sat behind her, dragging a long trail through the soil, undeniable proof of the hell she'd lived through that morning. No one spoke at first. Even the wind seemed to stop. Then a strangled sob broke from somewhere in the crowd. An old man, hair white as clouds, eyes hardened by a lifetime of struggles yet never hardened enough for cruelty like this, sank to his knees, hand clutching his chest. His voice trembled. How can one human be this cruel, child? Someone covered their mouth to swallow a cry. Someone else staggered back in disbelief. Someone stared at Ada as though looking at something more terrifying than a wild animal. Ada panicked. Her face drained of color. Her hand holding the whip trembled, and then the whip dropped to the ground with a dull thud. I didn't mean to. She stammered, her eyes darting everywhere. I just wanted her to work faster. A sharp HMPH cut through the air. It was Okoro, the strongest man in the village. He stepped forward, eyes burning like fire. Teacher? You tied a 70-year-old woman like a cow and beat her until her skin tore, and you call that teaching? Ada stumbled back, mouth shaking as if she wanted to explain, but her throat refused to release a single word. A middle-aged woman lunged forward, pointing directly at Ada's face. You've lost your mind. Nkechi sheltered you, fed you, gave you a home, and you treat her like an animal? Then came the whispers, the curses, the gasps, a rising tide of horror and fury from the entire village. Someone sobbed out loud. Someone covered their face because they couldn't bear to look, torn between grief and rage. On the ground, Mama Nkechi still lay motionless. Her body trembled faintly, like a candle about to blow out. Mama Kalu dropped to her knees beside her, hands shaking violently as she loosened the rope. Dear God, who would do this to a mother? The rope loosened inch by inch, revealing deep, raw grooves in Mama's skin, carved so deep the flesh split into channels. Another woman rushed forward and wrapped a cloth around Mama's back, but blood soaked through instantly. She's breathing so weak. How long was Ada beating her? Someone get the healer. Please, Ada screamed, clawing at the air in panic. I didn't mean to. I just wanted her to move faster. But the people around her looked at her the way one looks at a predator caught with blood still on its teeth. No human does this, Ada. She's your mother-in-law. She raised your husband. Oh God, what kind of person are you? Ada kept backing away, her face chalk white. She stared at the crowd, then at Mama, who no longer moved at all. Something shifted in Ada's expression. The panic turned into real fear. Fear for herself, because she finally realized she had crossed a line she could never return from. The line of a crime. By the time the rope came off completely, Mama could no longer stand. Her body collapsed like water. Her head fell into the lap of one of the village women. Her eyes were shut, her lips turning blue. Mama Nkechi, Niti, do you hear me? Don't close your eyes. Open them, please. There was no response. Only the faintest thread of breath slipping from her nostrils. The entire village held its breath. They all understood what that fragile breath meant. A man whispered quietly, voice thick with grief, "Good Lord? If we had come just a little later." No one finished the sentence. No one dared. Ada sank to the ground, clutching her head, muttering like someone losing their mind. I didn't know she was that weak. I didn't want her to die. I didn't. But her words scattered into the wind like dust, because the truth was already exposed, because the crime was already witnessed, because the whole village had seen it with their own eyes. And Mama Nkechi, the gentlest mother in all of Umuahia, now lay unconscious in the arms of strangers who loved her more than her own daughter-in-law ever did. The wind picked up. The cassava leaves rustled. like the choked sobs of the earth itself. Mama Kalu's house sat at the end of the village, a place where the soft wisps of evening cooking smoke often drifted into the sky like delicate white threads. It was the kind of peaceful spot that made anyone passing by feel their heart quiet down. But today, there was no peace. Today, her yard was packed with people. Every face carried the same expression: worry, sorrow, and a hint of fear. Mama Nkechi had been laid on Mama Kalu's clean bamboo bed, the one she always reserved for guests. The thin blanket draped over her did little to hide the dark, bruised whip marks across her back. She lay motionless, her lips dry, her breath thin and fragile, hanging on like a thread ready to snap. Mama Kalu wiped her forehead gently with a warm cloth. "Sister, open your eyes. If you fall asleep now, I'm afraid you won't wake up." But Mama didn't open her eyes. Only a faint, weak groan escaped her lips, so soft one had to lean close to hear it. In a corner of the yard, villagers held Ada down. She sat curled up like a soaked, trembling cat. She wasn't shaking from cold. She was shaking because she knew it was over. There was no explanation left to erase what she had done. Every pair of eyes on her felt like a verdict with no appeal. The police arrived. 2 officers in uniform stepped into the yard. One asked, "How long has she been beaten like this?" No one answered at first. Finally, a woman beside Mama Kalu swallowed her tears and whispered, "We don't know. We ran here when we heard the screams. If we had come a little later." Her unfinished sentence hung in the air like a knife that hadn't yet been pulled out of the heart. The other officer turned to Ada. "Do you have anything to say for yourself?" Ada opened her mouth, but only one weak sentence came out. I just wanted her to work." "Work?" The officer's brow tightened, his voice cold. "Or were you trying to turn your mother-in-law into an animal?" Ada dropped her head. Tears fell onto the dirt. But crying meant nothing now. As the villagers crowded around to help Mama Nkechi, Mama Kalu's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen and froze. It was Chima. Someone whispered, "We have to tell him. He deserves to know." Mama Kalu swallowed hard and picked up. Chima's voice burst through the speaker, full of energy as usual. "Mama Kalu, how's my mother doing? I tried calling her all morning and she didn't pick up." Mama Kalu looked toward the bamboo bed where Mama lay unconscious. Her voice cracked. "Chima, son, you need to listen carefully." A long silence. Then Chima's voice changed tight, sharp like a pulled string. "What happened to my mother? What happened?" Mama Kalu's breath trembled. "Son, you must come home immediately. As fast as you can. Your mother, Ada, beat her so badly." The entire yard fell silent. Only Chima's voice came through the small phone, trembling with disbelief. "No, my mother, my mother." Mama Kalu closed her eyes, steadying herself. "Come home, Chima." On the other end, his breathing sounded like a wounded animal, like someone whose heart had just been stabbed open. Then a broken whisper. "Mother, I left you with the wrong person." Everyone in the yard turned away, unable to look at one another. Even the police officers looked away from Ada. The pain of a child realizing he wasn't there to protect his own mother was a pain that tore flesh. Inside the room, Mama shifted slightly. Everyone gasped and crowded closer. Mama Kalu sat beside her, holding her hand. "Nkechi, can you hear me? Sister, don't scare us like this." Mama's eyes cracked open, dim and fading like a dying flame. She looked around at all the worried faces leaning over her. Her lips moved, voice thin and fragile as drifting air. "Ada, where?" The yard froze. Ada looked up, tears filling her eyes. Mama struggled to breathe, her voice breaking. "Whether you're a daughter or a daughter-in-law, you must first learn to be human." A gentle sentence like a final blessing, but it struck everyone like thunder. Then Mama closed her eyes. Her breath faded, slower, weaker. "Mama, Mama, don't sleep. Please don't sleep now. Nkechi, open your eyes." But Mama had slipped into unconsciousness, her body falling into a deep, dangerous faint. The police took Ada away as murmurs and shock rippled through the crowd. She turned back once, staring at Mama in terror, her face ghostly pale, her legs barely holding her up, but there was no pity left for her. The entire village stood in silence, a silence so heavy you could hear an old woman in the back quietly sobbing. Inside the house, the villagers cared for Mama. Warm cloths, blankets, small spoonfuls of water pressed against her lips. They cared for her the way one cares for family, the way Ada never had. Night fell. Mama Kalu's house glowed with a single soft lamp. Outside, the wind whispered through the cassava field, the same field that had witnessed the village's darkest tragedy. In the darkness, one message remained, a truth that hung in the air like a prayer. Parents don't need us to repay them. They only need us to never forget the sacrifices they once made. Fade to black. The story ends, but the echo remains in the hearts of everyone who reads it.